A new carbon tax proposal in the North Carolina General Assembly has attracted attention from Brian Balfour. He is Senior Vice President of Research at the John Locke Foundation. And Brian, you took a look at this bill sponsored by Senator Wiley Nickel, Democrat from Wake County, and had some concerns. Tell us why.
Yeah, well, first off, I think the good news is that this bill won't go anywhere. But it does raise some concerns in that what it would do, it was basically levy a tax on carbon emissions by companies here in North Carolina, energy producers and so forth. But that tax then carries over, permeates into all aspects of our economy. Because energy obviously is used by pretty much all productive activity in the economy, so that the burden of that tax would be borne by so many industries across the state, and of course those taxes then are going to be coming out of either worker wages or passed along in the form of higher prices for goods and services that are being produced using that energy that's being taxed. Either way, it's going to be those low-income households and workers that would be most hardly hit by a tax like that.
Yeah, you mentioned in a blog post at the Locker Room that anytime you're making this business activity more expensive, especially involving energy, it is the folks at the lower end of the scale who take the brunt of the hit.
Yeah, and it's not when you're trying to analyze taxes like this, you need to recognize that it's not necessarily the entity that's writing the check for the tax that's bearing the burden, but that burden is going to be felt elsewhere. That those taxes are going to change the behavior of the people being taxed, and so who's going to be harmed by that change in behavior? And again, typically when, especially even just normal corporate taxes or other business taxes, it's research has shown it usually winds up depressing worker wages.
The headline of your blog entry is State Carbon Tax Proposal Exposes Progressives' Cognitive Dissonance. And I want to get into that piece because this is an interesting element that you get into at the end of the blog, and that is this is a tax that would be on carbon emissions with the goal of having lower carbon emissions. And you get into the point that, at least in this instance, progressives seem to see that taxing something leads to less of it. They don't always seem to realize that.
Right, yeah, carbon taxes, they'll also support taxes, so-called sin taxes on cigarettes with the goal of reducing, cigarette usage. They've proposed higher taxes on gun purchases or ammo to try to reduce the purchases of those.
Soda in some places.
Exactly. So they recognize the notion that when you tax something, the less of that activity you'll typically get. So then that raises the question of why do they want to raise taxes on productive work? Do they want less work then? And also, I can translate that to the minimum wage as well, which is a government enforced. You can basically consider it a tax because it makes it more expensive to hire low-skilled workers. So when you bring those things up, they all of a sudden they want to deny that very same principle, that very same concept that they're following in a carbon tax, which is, the more you tax something, the less of that activity you get. So then when you raise the notion that, well, you're taxing work, you're taxing the hiring of new employees, we're going to see less of that, then all of a sudden they want to try to deny that. So that's really kind of where the cognitive dissonance comes into play. There's just really not a consistent application of their own principles and standards.
You mentioned this at the outset, but it's probably worth revisiting. This is a state carbon tax proposal, a bill that is in the state Senate, but it's not likely to really go anywhere this time around.
Right, yeah, not this session, not with the leadership we have in the Senate and the House. But also I think it is good to at least raise this in the consciousness of the voters of these are the types of policies that we could see. We're one election away from a change in leadership in the General Assembly. This is the type of policies that we could be seeing if that change were to occur.
The blog entry once again has the headline State Carbon Tax Proposal Exposes Progressives' Cognitive Dissonance. Its author is Brian Balfour. He is Senior Vice President of Research at the John Locke Foundation. Thanks so much, Brian.
Thank you, Mitch.